Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dennae Handford, and my wife, Dennae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur. On the podcast with us today is Jake Stenziano with JakeandGino.com. Welcome to the podcast, Jake.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here, Dan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Jake, we've been looking forward to talking with you for a while now. So we'd love for you to get us started and just kind of tell our audience, I guess, how you got into the field where you are as an entrepreneur. Give us a little bit of background and then tell us where your focus is right now.
Yeah, so I was driving around Tennessee as a pharmaceutical rep, listening to Steve Jobs' biography, or I guess autobiography, along with Arnold Schwarzenegger's, and I got super motivated. It's kind of a true story there. But I was working as a pharmaceutical rep in New York and just did not like the sort of economic and climate for taxes and cost of living and everything. So I started looking to other areas of the country. I started an Excel sheet that sorted cost of living, it sorted state income taxes, and I was looking at weather. So those were kind of my key metrics. And I was kind of honing in on northern Florida and eastern Tennessee. I was fortunate enough to get a job transfer, came to Tennessee. I was engaged at the time, and my wife was finishing up school, so she did not move with me for the first 6 months. So I've kind of just put myself in this, entrepreneurial incubator where I was just absorbing so much content from, guys that have done great things in their lives. That's why I mentioned, Arnold and Steve Jobs, and I was just absorbing a ton of content because I had nothing to do. I was living in this little apartment, just kind of grinding it out, working every day. And before I left, I had I was kind of inspired to get into real estate by one of the doctors I was calling on, and also my friend Gino, who, obviously started the business with. And he got interested because he was investing in duplexes at the time and saw the price per door, that was in Knoxville. Things were trading at around 2011. And so we said, well, if there's anything we can get into, let's do it. I started looking at ways to create passive income, and I was looking at, different things like vending machines. Had no idea, but, again, people were coaching me up, hey, you should get into real estate. And so I said, all right, well, I want something that's going to, give yield. And so I was actually just getting into it to, make a return on the investment. Had no idea about everything else that came along with it, all the multifaceted, companies that we've created since then. And so, was just going into it, trying to find something that cash flowed. It took us 2 years. I know there's a lot of folks out there that are trying to get into multifamily right now, and it seems like this pie in the sky. Very cliche statement, but the best thing that Gino and I ever did was that we did not quit. We stuck in there. We had a lot of people telling us we were crazy, and a lot of people telling us that our offers were never going to work. Blah, 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 blah. The stories, on and on and on, but we stayed into it for 2 years. I love pulling CoStar reports because I look at the things that have traded in our market, and a lot of it is 80 plus, 115 plus. And then you see this group that's constantly buying things in the 40s and 50s and executing, extremely well. So I'm kind of just going off about a few different things here. I hope that answers your question, but that's essentially how I got in the game. I wanted to invest in something that was real. Coming off the kind of the crash of 2008, was not looking to be in the stock market. Wanted control over the investment, and that's kind of how I got into multifamily.
Well, I want you to get us started as well and I like to talk about two tough decisions. And the first one I want you to talk about is one that you had along this journey that you've described, that as an entrepreneur that you made this tough decision. It was a really, really tough decision, and it had a not so good outcome. And maybe some of the lessons that you learned through that and what you do now to mitigate that risk. Something
that had not such a good outcome? See, I'm going to struggle with that one because I don't have anything off the top of my head, because I feel like everything that we've done, it's day to day, we're getting punched in the gut as entrepreneurs, as real estate investors. So I almost look at it as a blessing, though, because I came from a situation where I had no opportunity for promotion. I don't really want to get into the reasons behind that, but I was a very high performer in my previous career, but there was not an opportunity for me to get promoted, and they were doing layoffs every year, actually. So I was actually in this box where I had nowhere to go. So I was trying to find something that I was going to be able to get out of and grow. and getting, kind of forced into multifamily, if you will, or it was sort of just kind of imposed its will upon my career. I've got, every day something comes up that just, would jar a lot of people. There's, big challenges, this huge CapEx repair. But I look at it as such a blessing because I'm in control of my life. I'm in control of our outcomes. And so even though it's very difficult every day and there's a lot of things that would probably push people out of it, the hard things actually are not that big of a deal because, we find systems to put in place to compensate for those. So I don't have any regrets. I love life. I love living every day and just trying to, grow our company. So I don't have any, I guess I'm not living with any regrets right now because it comes to the
question's not about regrets. It's not saying, hey, you made a decision, you regret making the decision. It's you made a decision and you learned lessons through that decision so that you can, as you move forward, you can make better decisions.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying is because anything that's a not so good outcome, I just view it as a learning experience. So maybe it wasn't, Gino always talks about going back to our first deal and it was actually a 25 unit, very rough complex and it had septic tanks. We didn't really, do a good due diligence on the septic tanks. So when they failed, we had to come out of pocket for it. The property wasn't drawing, for a few months in terms of, wasn't paying out to us. And so those types of things happen. But what we tend to do is then, okay, this happened. So now what do we do? And we use that as a learning experience. So now that we know when we're going through our due diligence, we're scoping, the lines now when they're running to the sewer and doing these different things. So I think every time one of those things happen, we put a system in place to then be able to handle it.
I can find a principle or lessons from that because what you're basically saying is that as you've moved forward into this multifamily investing space, that as you've come across challenges or not necessarily decisions that you made along the way to not do something, but maybe some things that you might have missed along the way, you've basically found that out.
Yeah, exactly.
Put a system in place to make sure that didn't happen in the future.
Yeah, and not to get freaked out about it because there's every negative thing that has happened in the business. It happens and it's probably going to happen again. So it's just understanding. And as Ray Dalio says, it's another one of those. So it's another one of those. Know that it's going to happen again and don't be shocked by it. Just put a system and a procedure in place to deal with that. So the next time it doesn't happen, you're not, curling up a little ball and hiding under your blanket. You're saying, okay, I'm going to lean into it, figure it out, understand it. And then the next time it happens, we got a system in place and it's just, part of doing the day to day.
Sure. So let's shift now and talk about a tough decision that you've made along this journey as an entrepreneur that had a really good and positive outcome and some of the lessons you learned through that.
Yeah, everything. There's a ton of them to talk about. So I think number one was, my decision to move. I had no idea that we're going to create a large scale, vertically integrated multifamily company by moving. So that was a huge decision. And I think sometimes just taking yourself out of your comfort zone and out of your environment and replacing yourself in a new city is great. I think the idea to invest in a very rough C class, we'll give it, the benefit of the doubt, C- property on your first one was a very tough decision and kicked the crap out of us in the beginning, but we learned a ton of lessons from it. We learned from the ground up. We didn't start by hiring management companies. We learned everything so that we understand the business as we go forward. We've started scaling the business since then. We've started, various businesses off of, our investment business off of it. So I think, leaving my job, I was able to, quit my job, because of the cash flows of the properties within 3 years. That was scary. And people may have, I know a lot of people that invest and still work corporate that just kind of want to hold on because of the fear of stepping out and just being fully responsible for it and not having that paycheck. So I think there's a lot of challenging decisions every day. But I think if you can believe in yourself and make, educated decisions and understand and ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen from this? And I think that's the key question to all of this. And if it's not that big of a deal and you're freaking yourself out, you're getting scared unnecessarily, try to be as rational as possible and be objective. And I think that will help to lead to the best outcomes.
Well, and I've been following you and Gino for quite some time now. And one of the things that, I think is different with your group in the multifamily investing space is that you guys have a lot of focus on the vertical integration. And can you talk about that a little bit and about how you made some of those decisions to actually focus on, maybe, adding some, a property management company and things like that?
I just want to be in control. I'm not some kind of control freak, but, I think that if we're controlling as much of the process as possible, it's going to lead to better outcomes because one, we're going to understand the business better. If someone has to be removed, we're going to be able to remove them. We know the people that we're promoting or shifting into different positions, and it's going to lower costs. So at the end of the day, this is a business, and it comes down to income versus expenses. And if we're in total control of that versus subbing it out to somebody and being at the whims of what the market is doing, I think it's just going to ultimately, we're getting into syndication now in the investment arm. It's another tool in our toolbox. We are going to have greater control over this process because we have so much involvement in all the areas and aspects of our business. So I think that's really what it comes back to. I enjoy it. I love being, extremely active and involved in the business. And I think that, all of that rolls up to, at the end of the day, really good returns.
Jake, you touched on this just a little bit at the end of your question just a second ago, but I'm wondering if you can just share some of the strategies that you use when you are facing a difficult decision.
Yeah, it really comes down to, sort of asking that question, what is the worst thing that can happen here? And then trying to look at the upside and just being as rational as possible about it. I think that I guess I'm very, very optimistic and very positive and more of a kind of let's go, let's get it done. And so I try to just, create an environment where the folks that are around us are extremely positive. And I just have a sort of a different outlook on things. I don't look at things as much of that it's a challenge decision. I just look at what are the benefits of this? Where is this going to take us? How does this align and fit into our culture and our company? And then just try to be, very rational and very objective about it. I'm very big into meditating. So I think, when you meditate a lot, they talk about dropping the question in and not forcing the answer. Let it sit, let the answer come to you, and then go with your gut. That's sort of how we operate. We try as a group to be as rational as possible, look at what the benefits are going to be, and then to ask ourselves, what's the worst thing that's going to happen, and move on. Definitely do not kind of sit and fester and let these things take over, because I think that's part of the death spiral. And just even the idea of like a difficult decision, it doesn't even kind of jive with who I am. I just say, hey, let's look at this. Let's go get it. Let's attack it and move on.
All right. We're going to take a quick break and hear from one of our show sponsors. When we come back, we'll talk to Jake about some of his favorites as it relates to his life as an entrepreneur.
Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HanfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HanfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD Capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HanfordCapital.com. And we are back with Jake Stenziano. Start us off, Jake, by talking about your most favorite technology that you use in business that helps you make better decisions and makes your life easier as an entrepreneur.
I think one of the best technologies we use is definitely our software for the property management company. We use AppFolio, and it's just very convenient to pull reports, to getting some statements over to the banks. It's definitely helped out quite a bit. It's in the cloud, and I think it speeds things up. We buy a lot of properties from what you're going to call mom and pop owners. And one strategy that I think we've done very well and that we're going to continue to do, and I'm actually sort of pivoting back towards, is using community banks. Because when you're buying properties that, you may be buying them for $30,000, $40,000 a door from, a lawyer or a doctor that thought it was a good idea to own property. And, just they weren't really in it for the business. They just thought, I need some depreciation, et cetera. A lot of times these books are awful, and it's surprising. So when we have these great relationships with community banks and we can kind of get the minimal or the limited information that we're getting from these owners over to them, then getting it proper and cleaned up into our system, it's very easy to then, move these properties off to agency financing, your Fannies and your Freddies. So it's really it's sort of a link in the process. And by having the everything very neat and orderly in your CRM, that makes a really big difference. My partner Dylan on the syndication side has started using CrowdStreet. Seems pretty excited about some of the possibilities with that. And even, as simple as being on this Zoom call right now. We started, doing our Wheelbarrow Profits podcast on Skype. And that thing, I felt like I was always walking on eggshells, like that thing was going to crack or break at any minute. We're on a Zoom call right now and very, very stable. And we use a lot of our meetings on Zoom. So I think there's so many great technologies out there that we're using. I'm not a tech guy. So if I'm using it, that says a lot because it means it's intuitive and easy to use. So
what's a favorite quote that you've heard that's helped you as an entrepreneur?
I think I like to lean in. We're going back towards, being scared about things and the fear and just trying to block that out. And if there's something in front of you that, it just hits you in the gut. Oh, my God, this happened today. I bought this property. I didn't expect this. The water line broke. Oh, shit. And you just start literally losing it. Stop. Just stop. Shut it down for a minute. Lean into it, attack that right away. Don't let that fester. Don't let it sit back and just try to start getting, answers to your problems. And the sooner that you resolve that kind of stuff, the quicker the issue goes away because you have a solution. I think the quicker you can make decisions and then move on, I think it's the indecision that will eat you alive. And you got to watch out for indecision because as an entrepreneur, I really do think that it will kill you.
And what about a favorite book that has helped you make better decisions as an entrepreneur?
My two favorite books going right now, number one, the granddaddy of them all for me is Atlas Shrugged. It just really dove into objectivism, and I think that's something that could benefit the country as a whole. So Atlas Shrugged is definitely my favorite book. I love Principles by Ray Dalio. I also love the Steve Jobs autobiography. Those are some of my faves for sure.
And what's the next thing for you right now on your vision or your dream board?
Yeah, we're doing such great stuff. We just opened a new office, and so we brought the syndication there. We're bringing the education up from Florida to share, so we can collaborate in this office. We are starting a mortgage brokerage business. We have many people that are in search of loans that we can help out, and we have tons of great relationships. Whether it's community banks or the agencies. So we're bringing that in house. We got a book coming out next year about multifaceted multifamily. We have probably 20 holding companies or something like this that own, real estate. We have a management arm. We have the syndication going now. We have the brokerage. We have a small construction company, and it all stemmed off just this investment company. So it was oh man, I want to get into this. I want to get something that's going to be solid, that's going to offer a return. And then you start seeing things come out of like cable contracts, cell phone contracts, laundry. There's businesses within the business, and it just kept going, and it was just this eye-opening experience. I think we look at cost segregation as almost a business within a business, and this is something extremely powerful that can really change folks' financial future and picture. So just so positive and thankful, humbled and grateful for being in this business. Did not necessarily know what I was getting into on the front end, and just one of those opportunities that happened, and we jumped in and never looked back, and it kind of pushed everything else out of the way. Had many other ideas for businesses that I was working on. Actually, when we got into what consider multifamily investing, and again, multifamily kind of imposed its will and pushed everything out of the way, and kind of took hold. So just again, very just thankful and fortunate to be here.
Well, and how can the listeners reach out to you if they want to contact you, ask you some more questions offline, or start to follow you a little more?
Yeah, I think we're out there. You can definitely get on the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast on iTunes. We got the book on Amazon by the same name. You got jakeandgino.com. You have, Jake and Gino on LinkedIn. You have my personal account on Instagram, Jake Stenziano, Jake and Gino on Instagram, Facebook. I think we try to be on as many of these things as possible and do our best to manage them. So not hard guys to find.
Well, and I'll make sure that we put those on the show notes, which can be found at the toughdecisions.net website. And I want to thank you, Jake, for taking some time out of your schedule to be here with us today. You've been great, and look forward to continuing to follow you and look forward to having you on a future episode as you continue to grow as an entrepreneur.
Hey, thank you guys so much.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.